Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. But if you're new here, my name's Tyler and I just do consistent content on all things related to hockey in the NHL overall. And what we will be discussing today is again Matt Dumba. And yes, I know I just did a video on him just a couple days ago, but more reports have since come out, more significant reports if you will, regarding Dumba and trade rumors, this time with the Vancouver Canucks. Over the past 48 hours or so, there's been multiple reports of the Canucks being interested, but I held back from originally touching on them because I didn't see them as really much of a suitor. But since then, from many reports, including the likes of NHL Rumors Daily, who has been spot on with a lot of their information on Twitter, make sure to check them out. They have roughly 30,000 followers. They have come out over the past 24 hours and explained that there have been many discussions between these two teams, of course, regarding Dumba, and that the Canucks are simply not willing to part ways with their captain and Bo Horvat. Because as we know, of course, the Minnesota Wild have been seeking a number one centerman, or at least a top six centerman, obviously, and Bo Horvat would be the most perfect fit for them. But the Vancouver Canucks aren't going to give up Horvat and a deal for Dumba. There's no way that is happening. I will truly be mind blown if that happens. I hope for the Canucks' sake that isn't even considered. But from all the reports I've seen, not just from them, but actually more reliable sources, of course, whether it be the likes of people in TSN and SN, they have all explained that yes, Bo Horvat would be the subject of interest, but I just don't see it happening. It seems at this point in time that there is no way the Canucks are going to be willing to part ways with their captain, rightfully so. He's a crucial part of this team, and it's definitely of higher value than Dumba, in my opinion. It's something not worth giving up. So now here comes the question with the likes of Brock Boeser, of course, who has been connected to the Wild for easily over a year now. The Wild remind me a lot of Jim Rutherford when it comes to the Penguins, how he loves having guys in that lab, especially guys he has familiarity with, whether it be the likes of him actually, being a manager for them at some point in time in his career as an NHL GM, or just the fact of knowing them from other different directions. But when it comes to the Wild, they are in similar fate, but they love having people actually from Minnesota. So that leads the connection with Brock Boeser, of course. So Boeser has been subject to so many trade rumors, and while I understand a little bit, I don't understand why the Canucks just continue to throw his name out there. I simply don't get it. I think he has a lot of potential to him still. He's a great overall forward right winger, has a wicked shot. And while he did have a slight down year this year, especially due to some injuries, I wouldn't let that phase you. Boeser is only 23 years old. There's still so much promise with him, and I truly believe it would be a mistake to give him up. But this is a topic of discussion now. Of course, they have been willing to shop him. At least that's what the indication has been over this past year plus. So we'll happen, I'm not sure, but let's discuss now this possibility of Dumba landing in Vancouver, shall we? Of course, Matt Dumba, as I touched on him in my previous video, as the Winnipeg Jets look like a very strong suitor for him. The Habs have shown interest, but I think that between those two teams, the Jets make a lot more sense and a more realistic fit. Not that the Habs won't come in swooping away at the end, but I just see the Jets as a more realistic fit because the glaring holes on their defense. But Vancouver, yes, they don't have a terrible defense any means, but it isn't great either, and they do have some pending free agents coming up with the likes of course, Stecher and Tanev on that right side, and all indications seems that at least Stecher could very well be on his way out where the Canucks say don't match him. So I'm not sure what's happened there. I think Tanev is a real glue guy, is a crucial part of that locker room especially, and he's been healthy for the past year plus, which has been great for Vancouver because he's been dealing with plenty of injuries. So having the lineup, I really think, is big for the Vancouver Canucks. They love him. I think he's great for the team and, of course, the fan base, and I hope for their sake they don't get rid of him. But regardless, Dumba on that right side would easily help this blue line without question. While he isn't necessarily a defensive guru, he's a very solid two-way defenseman that can display great offensive ability. Dumba drafted in the first round back in 2012 by the Minnesota Wild, of course. He's 6'1", 180 pounds, and while he has looked a little so-so at times, given the fact that he is coming off of a fairly significant injury over these past 2 years, he still has been solid. In 69 games played, he had 27 points, including 6 goals and 18 assists, and he had a career-high 50 points 2 seasons ago, which is the last time he played a full season, I believe. So he has been dealing with some injuries. I understand that, but nonetheless, Dumba, hopefully fully healthy, if he can really kind of rejuvenate himself. He's only 26 years of age. I think there's plenty left to give when it comes to him, and with a team like Vancouver, who has a great offense that has only getting better, imagine Dumba on the likes of Quinn Hughes. That would honestly be nasty, like truly. Because Quinn Hughes, they bank on heavily for that offensive production from the point, because they really don't have much there. Yes, you can, of course, make the argument for Alexander Edler, which isn't a bad one at all, but outside of that, there isn't much there. And yes, they do need more defensive help for sure. I think Dumba would not be a negative add by any means, as long as they don't overpay. And that's the biggest question here. So what would they have to give up to get a guy like like Dumba, of course, he has a cap of $6 million for 3 years, so he is on a very controllable contract right now, even though his last 2 years in this contract are a modified no trade clause, so something to consider. But again, on the Vancouver Canucks side of things, Bo Horvat is not going anywhere. If he is, I will be baffled, and then you can prove me wrong in the comments. That's fine. I don't see how Vancouver gives away and coughs up their captain for the likes of Matt Dumba. It just does not make any sense to me at all. I understand the Wild needs center help, of course, really looking for that 1C, but still, Bo Horvat, it would blow my mind. But when it comes to Brock Boeser, a 1-for-1, I don't see that happening either. I think some more would need to be in place when it comes to a deal like that, because I don't believe they're on the same level when it comes to worth, especially Boeser. I think has higher value without question, given his youth, of course, and he will be an RFA after his contract. That's something that Dumba, I believe, won't be when his contract is done. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. So Boeser, of course, has 2 more years left on his contract of a cap of 5.87. While that may seem a little high, he's a lethal goal scorer in the NHL when healthy. And there's no doubting that. He's a wicked wrist shot and a slapper, of course, being that righty. Of course, he can be in the left dot on the special teams, of course, or on the right side. Wherever he shoots it, he gets a wicked shot off, truly. He's a very sound right winger, of course, and I think it would be a mistake for Vancouver to get rid of him. But let's talk about a consideration here, considering how much the Wild love a guy like Brock Boeser. They passed on him in the draft a couple years ago, I believe back in 2015. Yeah, he was drafted in the first round back in 2015. So it is something to think about, but in my opinion, I think there is a different avenue that these teams might go down, and I will get to that in a second. But Boeser, in 57 games played, had 16 goals, 29 assists for 45 points this season, had 56 points last year, and I believe he had 55 the year prior, and the most goals he scored was 2 years ago with 29 goals. So very interesting. Like I said, has a great shot, and he really has the potential, in my opinion, to be a consistent 30-goal scorer in the NHL, especially in an offense like Vancouver. It's really only on the verge of being something. They're just getting started in Vancouver with that core group, seriously, especially with the likes of Quinn Hughes on that blue line, oh baby, and of course Elias Pettersson, fantastic. JT Miller, love him as a Rangers fan. A lot of great pieces there, but regardless, 6'1", 208 pounds, of course. But here's the interesting factor: Minnesota Wild, as we all know, they're a team that will be interested in some goaltenders more than likely this offseason. They are not going with Dumba and Stalock going forward. I think there's a possibility that Dumba could either be bought out for the final year of his contract and having Kaapo Kähkönen in there, but riddle me this, Minnesota Wild and Vancouver Canucks fans. How would you feel if this deal were to say happen, but maybe not Boeser, because Boeser still seems a little far-fetched in my opinion. I think Vancouver would be better off keeping him, given his youth still. What about Jacob Markstrom, right? I know tandems are very crucial in the NHL, and he proved to be the number one for the Canucks over this past year. But there's no doubting how phenomenal Thatcher Demko was in his short stint in the playoffs this past year. And Demko is going to be their future number one. There's no doubting that. Now, will that be as soon as next season? That is something that we will kind of debate. I think it very well could be. And would they be willing to give up a guy like Markstrom in the sense of him being a UFA, of course, has a cap of 3.66 mil? I would assume he's going to look for anywhere between 5 and 6 mil, of course, if he were to hit the market. But what if Vancouver re-signs him for the purpose of trading him, to make sure that the Wild are for sure going to sign him versus, say, just trading his rights? Because if that happens, a deal isn't guaranteed to get done, and the Wild aren't even going to consider a deal like this without knowing for a fact Markstrom will sign a more long-term contract. Markstrom is, of course, 31 years of age, I believe. He was drafted in 2008 by the Florida Panthers in the second round, and 43 games played this year, 23 wins, 16 losses, and 4 overtime losses, a goals average of 2.75, and a save percentage of 618. He's 6'6", just over 200 pounds. He's a very solid goaltender, was deserving of some Vezina nominations, if you will, over this past season, but I really don't believe much of anything will happen there. I don't think anything will, of course, because of the fact that he did deal with some injuries this year. But up until his injuries, he was looking great and was really making the debate as to, wow, he really should be a Vezina candidate. Obviously, that didn't happen, but nonetheless, he had a very solid season with the Vancouver Canucks, with a very subpar defense for the majority of the season, defensively speaking. So Markstrom is a very solid goaltender. He deserves to be a number one, and he's not going to be a number one long term for the Vancouver Canucks. That just doesn't seem like it's happening. So while tandem is great, and I don't think it would hurt at all between having Demko and Markstrom really balance the load between each other going the years going forward, and they really are pushing hard for Dumba, which seems more and more likely at this point in time, at least, pulling aside from the Horvat talks. Maybe a guy like Markstrom on a new contract, of course, for if I had to guess, honestly, maybe between 4 and 5 years, might get it done to the Wild where they're trying to have an identity. They are trying to get a little younger, so I understand Markstrom might not be the best fit, but he will automatically be their number one right away, and he will be an upgrade over the goaltenders they currently have, in my opinion. And that's just something to consider personally. And then along with Markstrom, maybe you throw in, of course, a 2021 first round pick. This is all hypothetical, okay? So don't get all crazy with me in the comments. I'm just really pointing this out as I'm going right now, because just coming up with some actual realistic possibilities. So Markstrom in a first round pick for Dumba. Let me know your thoughts on that. If you think Dumba is worth a lot more than that, I understand that. If you think Dumba isn't worth nearly as much as that, I understand that too. Hear me out here, okay? So I just want to make that clear, because there is a lot of controversy as to how much worth Dumba really has, and I really don't know. I think he has a solid amount of worth. I think comparing to him with the likes of Max Domi, for example, when I talked about in my last video, I think they're pretty neck and neck in worth. So what does that equate to in, say, a deal like this with, say, Markstrom on a new contract and a first? I'm really not too sure, but I would love to hear your thoughts. I think this is a great discussion to be had, because there's no doubting the fact that these two teams have had multiple discussions at this point, which could really start to heat up soon. The smoke is there. Now it's just a matter if the fire is going to start getting to burn big time. So I'm really not sure, but I would love to hear your thoughts. So make sure to let me know, Canucks, Wild, and hockey fans overall. Do you think Dumba can land in Vancouver, or do you think a more realistic possibility could be the likes of the Jets and the Habs, who have reportedly speaking shown interest or at least seem like solid destinations? Regardless, Dumba to Canada seems inevitable at this point, right? It's just a matter of where exactly he will land. But let me know all your thoughts in the comments below, guys. I would love to hear it. As always, thank you all so much for the love and appreciation. It means a lot to me. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. We are less than 30 subscribers away. Help us get there. I'm going to start doing live streams, going to do an updated channel video when I hit 1K, and all these other great things. So it means so much to me. Thank you all so much, guys. Comment down below. Check out my previous videos. Check out my previous Matt Dumba video if you haven't, because then you'll get a better understanding on where I'm coming from with all this. And I'll be back very, very soon, guys.